Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Naveen and I in our part two interview. We were just talking about Naveen's journey through divorce, and I think maybe it would be nice to mention how we met, actually, Naveen, because this is how the interview came about. Do you want to tell, or shall I tell?
No, you tell.
Okay. We were we were invited by the Times magazine for a photo shoot because they were doing a story on couples who have divorced or divorced in their 40s and in their 40s and 50s and are still friends. And that's my situation with my ex-husband. We're still very, very good friends to this day. And there we met Naveen and Roy. And I liked the way you walked in saying hello. And I thought, oh, this must be Sally. And then from there, after talking, then I thought it would be great if Naveen could share her story with others who are going through divorce, hoping that people can see that it actually doesn't have to define you, and it doesn't have to be the story of your life, and it doesn't have to mean that you and your ex hate each other. You can hate each other, but just being civil to one another, where there are kids involved, really. Okay, Naveen. So we've talked about when you realized and how long you stayed after your realization that the marriage needs to end or you wanted it to end, and why you stayed for 10 years. How did your family take it when you said, this is it, I'm off?
They were really divided, and the best way to describe it is that my brothers, who are closer in age to me, were pretty horrified, which I thought was strange.
Mm-hmm.
And my 89-year-old aunt said, "What took you so long?" My mother sadly had died in the meantime, but my father remained tight-lipped about the whole thing.
Okay.
I think he just didn't really know how to cope with it all, and he found it a difficult subject, which I think is true of most of my friends as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's actually one. So those family and friends that I wanted to speak about. So your family was quite divided. It's interesting that your aunt, like you're saying, who's 89, had this reaction, while your brothers who are closer to you, you would think that with time changing and everything,
Absolutely.
and the frequency of divorce today, it's not the most horrible thing that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and how about with friends? How did that work?
I think friends' reactions are probably the hardest for anybody going through divorce, because they feel they need to take sides, which is wrong. But the way you can help that, as the people going through divorce, is to not tell terrible tales. Nobody wants to sit there over dinner hearing about how ghastly it all was, or how horrible she is, or how horrible he is, or it's unproductive. Just say, we have made a decision.
Yeah.
We're going to do this because it's the best for us, and I hope that you won't choose sides. But if you don't trash the other side, and you don't try and apportion blame, I know it's not always. You and I went through divorce where there wasn't another person, and we'd just grown apart. There wasn't abuse or anything like that. And I appreciate that it isn't always possible to remain, I won't talk about how horrible he was to me, or how he's gone off with my best friend. I totally sympathise with that. But if you can see your friends as your refuge and comfort rather than your therapist, then you can make it a bit easier for them, hopefully.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, but I don't need to be going through something to appreciate that a friend is suffering.
Yes.
I think that's where people feel, oh, divorce, how ghastly, this is horrible, I don't want it to happen to me. The other thing was that I had been invited to a dinner party for the first time in 22 years of marriage. First time I had gone to a dinner party on a Saturday night on my own. I don't know if people gave a passing thought to how I felt, but it was the first time I had to, get ready and go there, and I didn't have somebody with me. And I walked into the room, and there were 7 other couples and me. So lovely friends invited me. to make me feel that they told me who else would be there.
Yeah.
A couple of drinks later, a lady who I didn't know very well said, "Gosh, how does it feel to be the odd number?" Looking at the seating plan at the dinner table. Oh, odd number. Forget it. Don't rise. And then I knew the other couples I'd seen them lots of times at dinner parties. They weren't particularly affectionate or, teenage-like in their public show of affection.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there they were, hanging on to their men.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Oh, God. And they had two of the boys, aged 18, serving at the table that evening. It was a big anniversary dinner. And so I let that comment go. I let a few other comments go. And then suddenly somebody in front of me said, she leant across and she said, "I do hope you're not after our husbands."
Oh, wow.
And the whole table felt silent and looked at me like I was the Scarlet Woman. And I thought,
wow.
I said, "You know what? I'm not after your husbands. It's your sons I've got my eye on."
Brilliant.
Oh, just get over it. I'm here.
It's really a very odd feeling when you don't realize just what it is like when you go to dinner parties on your own. And people will always say, "Oh, come on, just come on, everybody who's at the dinner party, they know you're divorced, so what, it doesn't matter."
Yeah.
But actually it does, you do feel odd when everybody's talking, to their husband and say, "Oh, well, you remember last week you did this," or the wife, "You remember that," and then you're there, I don't remember anyone.
I have nothing to add. Another husband came to me and he said, "Please don't glamorize divorce, will you? Because
oh my gosh, wow.
Lucy and I are having a hard time at the moment."
Okay.
And I thought, I'm not how can I glamorize being on one salary with everything on, coping on my own?
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the women around the table didn't have any of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, there is still a stigma. I'm sad about that because divorce is not an uncommon thing anymore.
Yeah.
Sadly, it's happens to a huge number of people.
Yeah.
But a happy divorce is much, much better than an unhappy marriage.
Yes. And now that brings us really nicely into talking about the stigma of divorce, because it's something that I wrote about recently in a blog about the stigma of divorce that surrounds divorce. Because since I started the divorcemagazine.co.uk, I have had people, not one, not two, a fair number of people telling me, "Why did you call it the Divorce Magazine?" And I'm like, well, because it is the divorce magazine. They say, "Well, can't you find something nicer, something gentler that is, And I'm thinking, well, it depends on how you look at divorce. It's not the worst thing ever. It's difficult. Yeah. But that's exactly what it does. It is the divorce magazine. I've had people say to me, "Oh, I'd really like to link with you on LinkedIn, but, I'd rather people didn't see that I was, attached to anybody in, working with a divorce magazine or working in divorce." Even on Facebook, the same thing, because my family, my friends will see this and that. Yeah. So this stigma of divorce, despite its frequency, it's like still quite present.
I think it's because people feel that there's the word failure, failed relationship, failed marriage, failed, the sense of letting down.
Yeah.
It's our own attitude to it that I think is causing this.
Yeah.
It's a dirty word. It's an unsavory subject. Yeah. Let's try and ignore it.
Yes.
And then we wonder why people's reactions to it are so negative.
Yes, exactly. And it just it goes on. And one of the things that, we also try and do is to show that, divorce is a life, it's a journey that you've gone through in life. You don't have to stay there. And I think when you don't get on with your ex and you purposely choose to continue hating and despising and being angry with your ex 6 years, 7 years down the line, then you have chosen to define yourself as the divorced person, the one whose marriage failed. Yeah.
You're putting that label on yourself.
Yeah.
And you're quite happy with it.
Yeah.
And you're not moving on, are you?
No, not at all.
You deserve to.
What was the turning point? Because you said it wasn't always like this with you and Roy. What was the turning point where it was just, was it gradual? Was it one day you or Roy woke up and said, actually, I don't need to fight anymore. I don't need to make it into,
Yep, I think he diffused it perfectly because he is not confrontational.
Okay.
And I suddenly found myself being the sort of the more demanding, aggressive, or making huge mountains out of molehills. The child would come back filthy and I'd be furious he came back filthy. So what? He's had a great time with Dad.
Yes.
Would you have gone insane if you were still married to him? I don't think I would.
Yes.
I would have just said, thank God he had a good Sunday and I could read the papers.
Exactly.
I felt a bit foolish after a while. And also, I thought, we've been together an awfully long time. It's 22 years.
Yeah.
If I constantly say bad things and make him out to be a total idiot, what does that say about me?
Yeah.
Who did I choose as the father of my children and a companion to me, the other half of my circle, for the best part of half my life?
Yeah.
So I realised that even if I didn't really like the way he behaved with me as my husband, or he wasn't the perfect choice for me anymore, that didn't mean that he wasn't the perfect choice to my kids, because for them, he's their only dad. He was a hero. They didn't care whether he, forgot their school shoes at his house or whatever. They just knew that they loved Dad.
Yeah.
So, yes.
There was a really good statement that you made when we met at the studio. Remember? Which I would like to finish with, where I think it might have been the makeup lady who asked a question.
Yes, she did.
Yes.
Well, she asked as well, but I was very keen on being good friends with Roy, particularly for my youngest, who was only very young. And when he got to be about 17, he said, "Oh God, Dad's here again for the weekend." You can't please kids. He said, I wonder why you two ever got divorced. And I said, to save the friendship.
Yes.
I divorced Dad so that I could save the friendship.
Yes.
And that was really very true. We did get divorced to save the friendship, because if we'd carried on, it would have not stayed friends for long.
So what would you tell anybody who's going through a divorce at the moment, and because you said it takes two, which is very right, very true, and they're the ones who are being difficult, and they're the ones who are making it very tough for the friendship to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I say the same thing over and over again, whether it's within my work to my clients, or if I meet anybody socially. I just say, it doesn't matter whether, and I think you touched on this too, it doesn't matter whether you like each other right now, but all I ask of you is to have a good business relationship, because you would never speak to a client that in the way you're talking to each other.
Yeah.
So try and be civil, especially where the children are concerned, and get a conduit, whether it's through mediation or whether you joint therapy or whatever. If you can just talk about things in a civilized way, away from the children.
Okay.
And really to try and maintain a professional business attitude to each other instantly makes you put on a different hat, because you wouldn't go in and scream and shout at Fred, who is one of your major account holders, or your boss, or somebody in your office like that. So
thank you.
Why treat each other with that total lack of respect? Because then it just becomes a competition on who can be the rudest to each other.
That's true. Thank you so much, Naveen.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. So we're going into our next interview about family mediation. We'll see you in 1 second.